When I saw the for sale sign planted crooked in front of my parents' old house, I thought it was a mistake. The morning sun was sharp that day, cutting through the fog that usually lingered on Maple Drive. I had come by to water the roses, the ones my mother planted 20 years ago, and there it was, a bright red sign with a smiling realtor's face, sold. I remember my knees going weak. For a second, I thought I'd stepped into the wrong street, but the chipped blue shutters, the creaking porch swing, and the familiar smell of lilacs in the air told me otherwise. This was my home, our home. The one place that still felt like my parents' voices lived between the walls. And now, it was gone. I stood there for a long time, frozen on the cracked pavement, clutching the keys in my hand. A gust of wind lifted the edge of the sold sticker, fluttering it like a cruel reminder that life moves on, with or without your permission. I didn't even notice the car pulling up until I heard her voice behind me. "Lena, I was going to tell you." It was my sister, Marcia. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her tone soft, trembling carried something else. Guilt. That was the moment I knew. She'd done it. She had sold the only thing left of our family, and she hadn't even told me. Before that day, life was quiet, almost painfully ordinary. I worked as a nurse at the local clinic, mostly night shifts, so my days started late. The house, our childhood home, had been empty since Mom passed 3 years ago. Dad had gone a few years earlier. Marcia lived an hour away with her husband, Greg, and their teenage son. We talked, but not as often as I would have liked. She was the practical one, always busy, always in control. I was the sentimental one, the keeper of things that didn't matter to anyone else. Mom's recipes, Dad's radio, the quilt from Grandma's attic. Every Sunday, I'd drive to the house, sweep the porch, open the windows, and let the air breathe again. I'd play Mom's favorite cassette, some old jazz tune that always skipped halfway through, and sit by the window, just listening. That house wasn't just wood and paint to me. It was the sound of Dad's laugh echoing down the hallway. It was the smell of coffee and burnt toast in the mornings. It was home in a world that kept forgetting what home meant. Marcia never came on those Sundays. She said it was too hard to visit. I didn't push her. We grieve differently, I told myself. We did talk about the house once after Mom's funeral. We agreed, or so I thought, that we'd keep it. Maybe rent it out someday. Maybe turn it into a family place for holidays. She nodded then, distracted, scrolling through her phone while I folded the funeral programs into neat little piles. I took that nod as a promise. I realize now it was just convenience. The weeks before the betrayal were like any other. Work, bills, cooking dinner for one. Sometimes, I'd stop by the house to trim the hedges, or fix a loose shutter. One night, after my shift, I found a letter wedged under the front door. It was from the county tax office addressed to both of us. I didn't think much of it. I texted Marcia a picture and wrote, "Got this at the house. Do you want me to handle it?" She didn't reply. The next morning, she sent a voice note. "Don't worry about it, Lena. I already took care of the taxes." Her voice sounded rushed, clipped. That was the first time something felt off. 2 weeks later, I stopped by the house again after my shift. The porch light, which had been broken for months, was glowing. Someone had replaced it, and there was a faint smell of paint in the air. I stepped inside. The living room walls, once pale yellow, were now stark white. The old rug was gone. Boxes were stacked in the hallway, labeled miscellaneous. For a second, I thought maybe Marcia had decided to finally renovate. But the boxers didn't have our handwriting. They had shipping labels. I called her immediately. "Hey, did you come by the house recently?" I asked. There was a pause on the line, then a laugh, forced, uneasy. "Oh, yeah. Greg and I hired someone to patch up the place. You know, keep it from falling apart." She sounded casual, but there was an edge beneath her words, like she was performing calm. "Since when do we have the money for that?" I said, half joking. "Don't worry about it. Greg knows a guy." The conversation ended quickly after that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those boxes, the fresh paint, the light replaced, the faint echo of footsteps that weren't mine. Something was changing in that house. I just didn't know what yet. The next weekend, I drove by again. There was a car I didn't recognize parked out front, a silver SUV with a real estate magnet on the side. I sat in my own car for a while, watching a woman in heels walk up the driveway with a clipboard. She peered into the windows, took photos of the porch, and smiled like she'd just found something valuable. That's when the dread settled in my stomach. I got out and walked up to her. "Can I help you?" She blinked, startled. "Oh, hi, you must be the owner. I'm Natalie from Oak Street Realty. Your sister mentioned you might stop by." "My sister?" My voice cracked. She nodded cheerfully. "Yes, Marcia. She told me you both decided to move forward with the sale. Lovely property. By the way, we already have an interested buyer." The air went cold around me. My throat felt dry. I managed to whisper, "Sale?" Natalie's smile faded a little. "Oh, I assumed you knew. She said you'd signed the paperwork." I didn't remember signing anything. That drive back home was a blur, the kind of blur where time folds into noise. My hands were shaking so badly that I missed 2 red lights. When I got home, I went straight to my file cabinet, pulled out the folder labeled house, and laid every document on the table. The deed, the will, the notarized agreement that listed both our names. Everything was still there. But when I compared the property ID number on the realtor's flyer to the deed, something didn't match. The name on the bottom of the new listing said, Marcia D. Clarkson, sole owner. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the words sole owner in my head, each time feeling a fresh sting. How could my name, my right, just vanish? At sunrise, I drove straight to the county records office. The clerk behind the counter was polite, the kind of polite that feels rehearsed. I gave her the property address, and she clicked away on her computer before sliding a paper toward me. "There's a new deed recorded last month," she said. "Ownership transferred from joint tenancy to single ownership. Looks like it was signed and notarized here in person." I felt my heart drop. "Signed by who?" She turned the paper around. There were 2 signatures at the bottom. One of them was clearly Marcia's. The other looked like mine. But it wasn't. My handwriting is round and steady. Years of filling medical charts have made it impossible for me to mistake my own loops and strokes. This signature was sharper, rushed, but close enough to pass. "She forged it," I whispered. The clerk gave me an uneasy look. "Ma'am, if you believe there's been a falsified document, you'll need to contact the registrar or file a report." I nodded numbly, clutching the paper like it might dissolve if I let go. Outside, the morning light felt cruelly bright. I sat in my car, trembling, staring at the paper that had erased me. It wasn't just a house. It was my parents' laughter, their memories, my childhood, and she'd taken it, signed it away, as if none of that meant anything. When I called her, I was too angry to filter my words. "Marcia," I said, my voice shaking, "why is your name the only one on the deed?" There was a long pause. I heard her take a breath, slow and deliberate. "I was going to tell you," she began. "It was just complicated. Greg and I." "You forged my signature." Her silence confirmed it. "Finally," she said, "I didn't forge anything. I had to make a decision. You weren't doing anything with the house, Lena. It was just sitting there. It's been years." "Years," I snapped. "Mom's been gone 3 years. That's not years, that's grief. You sold our home while I was still trying to keep it alive." She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "We needed the money, Lena. Taxes, repairs, it was all piling up. You don't understand, Greg's business." "Greg," I interrupted, disbelief thick in my voice. "Since when does Greg get a say in our parents' home?" "It's my home too," she said sharply. "And I had to do what was right for my family." Her words hit me like a slap. Her family? As if I wasn't part of it anymore. I hung up before I said something unforgivable. For hours, I just sat there on my couch, surrounded by silent walls and bills I suddenly couldn't look at. Eventually, anger gave way to clarity. I started making calls to a lawyer, to the notary, to anyone who could explain how a forged signature could pass as legitimate. The lawyer I found, a calm man named Peterson, listened carefully as I explained everything. He nodded, taking notes. When I handed him the documents, his brow furrowed. "This is a textbook case of fraudulent transfer," he said. "If you didn't sign this, it's a crime." "A crime," I repeated, the word feeling heavy. He tapped the paper gently. "But it's going to take proof. The courts will require verification, handwriting analysis, witness testimony, maybe even the notary's statement." My stomach twisted. "And if the house has already been sold?" He exhaled. "Then it's harder. But not impossible. You could still go after the proceeds." Proceeds. That was the word that finally broke me. She didn't just take the house. She took the money. The next few days felt like wading through wet cement, heavy, slow, suffocating. I avoided calling her, knowing my temper would turn the conversation into something ugly. But she called me. Every day. At first, it was pleading, "Lena, please. You don't understand. It was a mistake. I was trying to fix things." Then it was defensive. "You were never around anyway. You always act like you're the only one who cared about Mom and Dad." Finally, it turned cold. "You can take me to court if you want, but you'll only hurt yourself." That last call was when I realized something fundamental had died, not just trust, but the illusion that family could never betray you like strangers do. I decided to confront her in person. It was a gray afternoon when I drove to her house. The driveway was full, Greg's truck, her SUV, and the car their son used for college. Everything looked picture perfect: the trimmed lawn, the white fence, the flowers and hanging pots. I rang the bell, and when she opened the door, she looked startled, but not guilty. That was what made it worse. "Lena," she said, her voice steady but her eyes darting. "Can we talk?" She stepped aside. The house smelled of cinnamon candles and something baking, the kind of domestic comfort that used to define her. It made my chest ache. We sat at the dining table, the same kind of mahogany our parents had. Family photos lined the wall. Marcia with Greg on vacations, their son at graduation, all smiling. I placed the deed copy on the table between us. "You forged my signature." She didn't deny it this time. She just lowered her eyes. "I didn't think you'd ever let it go, Lena. You hold on to everything." "That's because it mattered." Her jaw tightened. "We needed to move on. Keeping that house was like living in a graveyard. I thought selling it would finally let us breathe." I stared at her. "You could have talked to me. You could have asked." "I was afraid you'd say no." "Then maybe that should have told you something," I whispered. Greg walked in halfway through. He looked between us, uneasy. "What's going on?" Marcia's voice rose. "Your sister's angry because I sold the house. That's all." He frowned. "I thought you said she agreed to it." I watched his expression shift: confusion, realization, discomfort. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. "Wait," he said slowly. "You told me she signed." Marcia stood up abruptly. "Greg, not now." But it was too late. The truth had already cracked open between them. I stood to leave. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady. "You didn't just sell a house, Marcia. You sold our parents' memory. You sold me out of my own life." She followed me to the door, her eyes wet. "I'm sorry, Lena, I really am. But it's done." I turned back once, meeting her gaze. "No, it's just beginning." The next few weeks felt like I was living two lives at once. By day, I went to work smiling for patients, charting medications, listening to heartbeats, but inside, I was somewhere else entirely. Every sound of paper rustling reminded me of the deed. Every pen stroke reminded me of her forged signature. By night, I gathered evidence. Bank statements, email threads, text messages, anything that showed my involvement in maintaining the property. I printed copies of every conversation where she mentioned the house. Peterson, my lawyer, guided me through it all. Don't get emotional, he said gently. Just stay factual. Let the paper speak. It was easier said than done. Each document I found felt like reliving a betrayal. My sister's emails to the realtor, the notarized papers she'd signed, all clean, all professional, all pretending I didn't exist. Sometimes I'd sit at my kitchen table staring at her handwriting. I used to love that handwriting, the same one that signed my birthday cards, that helped me with homework. Now it looked like a stranger's. The day we filed the fraud complaint, I felt sick. The clerk stamped the papers with a heavy thud that echoed in my ears. It was official. My sister was now the subject of a legal investigation by my doing. That night, Marcia called. Her voice was shaking. You filed a case against me? I did. Lena, please, you didn't give me a choice. She was quiet for a moment. Then her tone hardened. You're going to regret this. You're tearing the family apart. I almost laughed, the kind of laugh that comes out when crying would hurt too much. You already did that when you sold the house. Then I hung up. It didn't take long for word to spread. In small towns, secrets are currency. And when sisters fight over inheritance, it becomes headline gossip. At the grocery store, whispers followed me down the aisles. That's her. The nurse whose sister stole her house. I kept my head high, pretending not to notice. But at night, I'd lie awake, wondering what people were saying about her. Marcia must have felt it too, because she stopped showing up to church. Her son, Dylan, messaged me once on Facebook. Aunt Lena, Mom's not herself. Please don't hate her. I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to. But part of me ached for him, for all of us. None of this was his fault. A month later, the case moved forward. The county registrar confirmed what I already knew. The signature wasn't mine. A handwriting analyst verified it in court. When I saw the official report, I didn't feel victory, just emptiness. Peterson asked if I wanted to pursue criminal charges. You have enough evidence, he said. Forgery is serious. But I hesitated. My heart said justice. My conscience whispered family. I just want what's fair, I told him. I don't want to destroy her. He nodded. Then we'll go for a civil claim restitution for your share. The hearing was quiet but tense. Marcia sat across from me, her face pale, hands clasped in her lap. She didn't look at me once. Her lawyer spoke first, arguing that she'd acted in good faith, that she believed I was fine with selling, that she needed the funds to maintain the property. Then Peterson stood, calm, steady. Good faith doesn't erase fraud, he said. It doesn't erase a forged signature. He handed over the analyst's report, the emails, the text messages where she admitted to fixing the paperwork. Marcia's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Finally, the judge spoke. Ms. Clarkson, it's clear the transfer was fraudulent. The sale stands, but your sister is entitled to half of the proceeds with damages for the falsified documentation. Marcia's head dropped. She didn't argue. She just nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. After court, I walked outside into the sunlight. For the first time in months, I felt air fill my lungs without the weight of anger pressing against it. Marcia followed me out. Her steps were slow, uncertain. Lena, she said softly. I turned. She looked smaller somehow. Tired. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I thought if I handled it, we could both move on. I didn't realize I was trying to bury something that still mattered to you. I wanted to shout, to ask her how she could do it, how she could betray me so quietly, but her voice, raw, trembling, stopped me. Instead, I said, you didn't just sell a house. Marcia, sold the last piece of Mom and Dad. Tears filled her eyes. I know. We stood there in silence, two sisters bound by the same blood and a wound that no court ruling could heal. Then she said something I didn't expect. The money's gone. Greg used most of it to cover debts. I couldn't stop him. The words hit me like a fresh blow. But instead of anger, I just felt tired. So you lost it all? I asked. She nodded. Everything. For a moment, I almost pitied her. But pity wasn't forgiveness. Then maybe this is what we both get, I said quietly. You lost the money. I lost the home. We both lost the family. After that day, things changed. Not all at once, but slowly, like the house itself fading from memory. People in town eventually stopped whispering. Time, I realized, doesn't heal everything, it just teaches people to talk about other things. Marcia and I didn't speak for a while. I sent her my share of the settlement papers. She signed without resistance. The money wasn't much less than what the house was worth, and certainly not enough to fill the empty space it left behind. But it was something. A line in the sand that said, "You can't erase me completely." I donated part of it to the community garden my mother used to volunteer at. Somehow, that felt right. Every once in a while, I'd drive past Maple Drive. The house had been repainted, the shutters now white, the porch swing replaced. A young couple lived there with their little girl. Sometimes, I'd see the child playing by the roses I'd once tended. And, strangely, instead of bitterness, I felt peace. Maybe the house didn't belong to us anymore. But the love we'd grown there, that couldn't be sold. Time has a strange way of softening even the sharpest edges of pain. Months passed, and I found myself thinking about Marcia less with fury and more with sorrow. One Sunday afternoon, I drove to the small cemetery where our parents rested. I brought 2 sunflowers, one for Mom, one for Dad, and a small folded letter I hadn't planned to write, but somehow had. I sat by their graves, the cool wind brushing over my shoulders, the hum of insects steady in the background. "Mom," I whispered, "you'd be disappointed in us." The truth stung. I told them everything. The forged papers, the court case, the betrayal, and how empty it all felt, even after justice was served. When I finished, I placed the letter between the 2 headstones and said, "I hope you can forgive us, because I'm still learning how." For the first time in a long while, I cried, not out of anger, but release. Back home, I started noticing small things that made me smile again. The sound of the kettle whistling in the morning, the neighbor's cat sunning itself on my porch, the scent of jasmine from the yard. Grief had quieted, leaving behind something gentler. I began journaling short entries about my parents, my childhood, even Marcia. At first it was painful, but over time, it became a ritual of healing. Each page was a soft confession, an untangling of everything I'd carried too long. Then one evening, out of the blue, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Marcia stood there. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes red but steady. She looked smaller, humbler somehow. "I didn't think you'd answer," she said. I almost didn't. She gave a faint smile, the kind that trembles on the edge of guilt. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the familiar pictures on my wall. Mom and Dad at the lake, the 2 of us in matching Easter dresses, a photo of me holding her son when he was born. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said finally. "Not because the court made me, not because I lost anything, but because I know I broke something between us that money can't fix." Her voice cracked, and she pressed a trembling hand to her chest. I thought I was being practical. Greg was drowning in debt, and I kept telling myself the house was just bricks and wood. But when I saw you in court, I realized it wasn't just a house to you, it was home, it was them. I stayed silent, letting her words find their way out. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, "but I need you to know I regret it every single day." I looked at her, really looked for the sister I grew up with, who used to braid my hair and sneak me cookies, who once swore we'd always take care of each other. And for a moment, the anger inside me cracked open, revealing something else underneath: exhaustion, sadness, love. "You hurt me more than anyone ever has," I said quietly. "But I can't live my life holding on to that hurt forever." She looked up, eyes wet. "Does that mean?" "It means," I said softly, "that I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to." Marcia covered her mouth, sobbing. I didn't move at first, I just watched her crumble under the weight of her own remorse. Then, Slowly, I reached out and pulled her into a hug. For a long time, neither of us spoke. In the months that followed, we began rebuilding, cautiously, quietly. We met for coffee once a week. Some meetings were awkward, filled with long silences and half-hearted smiles. Others felt almost normal, like old times. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about remembering differently. We talked about our childhood, how Dad used to hum while fixing the porch steps, how Mom made Sunday pancakes shaped like hearts. We even laughed once or twice. The house we'd lost became something else, not a symbol of betrayal anymore, but a chapter we both survived. One evening, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was from the couple who'd bought our family home. Inside was a photo, the young woman standing on the porch with her daughter, both smiling. On the back, she'd written, "We found your name carved under the porch railing, Lena and Marcia, 1988. We kept it there. We thought you'd like to know, the roses are still blooming." I stared at the picture for a long time, tears blurring the edges. Then I called Marcia. "Do you remember carving our names under the porch?" I asked. She laughed softly through the phone. "You made me do it. You said it was so we'd never forget we belonged there." "Well," I said, smiling, "looks like we still do, in a way." For the first time in years, I felt something settle inside me, a quiet peace, like a home within myself. Life went on. Seasons changed. I kept working at the clinic. Marcia found a job at the local library. We didn't become the inseparable sisters we once were, but we became something honest, two women who had seen the worst in each other and decided to choose love anyway. Sometimes, forgiveness isn't a grand gesture. It's a small, steady decision made every day, over coffee and quiet conversations. When people asked about the house, I didn't flinch anymore. I simply said, it taught me what family really means. Because in the end, family isn't about what you inherit. It's about what you hold on to, even after everything's gone. Sometimes life doesn't take away what we love to punish us. It takes it away to teach us what truly lasts when everything else is gone. When I lost that house, I thought I'd lost my parents, my past, and my sense of home all over again. But I see now that home was never just the walls we built, or the roses that bloomed outside our porch. It was the love that lived between those walls, even when it cracked. Forgiveness doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't rewrite what was done. But it does set you free from bitterness, from anger, from the story that keeps replaying in your head at night. I still drive by that old house sometimes. The new owners painted the shutters blue. There's a little girl who plays on the porch with a red jump rope. Every time I see her laugh, I smile and whisper, "Take care of it, sweetheart." That house holds a lot of love. And maybe that's what healing really is, learning to bless what broke you, and still finding the courage to love again. So, tell me, if someone you loved betrayed your trust, like my sister did, would you fight for justice, or would you choose forgiveness? Because sometimes, the hardest thing isn't losing the house. It's learning to rebuild the home inside your heart. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what would you have done if you were in my place.